Characters dying in movies can be tragic, but we've often only known them for an hour, whereas in games we can spend dozens of hours controlling their movements and building up bonds with them, only to have those connections crushed in the most brutal and shocking of ways. The word epic is thrown around a lot and is often used, especially amongst us internet pundits, but it is quite possibly the only suitable adjective to describe these iconic gaming deaths. Because these characters didn't just die, they went out in goddamn style. Whether they simply died in unique ways or sacrificed their lives in a bid to save the world, these heroes and villains went out with a bang, not with a whimper, and we'll never forget their fateful finales. And no, Aerith isn't on this list because she's been on every other internet list in existence. Sorry guys, she would have been number 1 though. Anyway, I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 most epic deaths in video game history. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to stay notified. Ding, ding, done. Number 10, Mordin, Mass Effect 3. The Mass Effect series was filled with player choices and branching paths, so there are actually a few different ways for the Solarian scientist Mordin Solus to meet his end. In fact, it's even possible for him to fake his own death and survive the series, but in most playthrough he ends up dying in heartbreaking fashion in Mass Effect 3. Mordin has finally managed to find a solution for the genophage, a virus which he had helped to construct which had caused the entire Krogan population to become sterile. He's given a chance to finally make this sin right though, and fix the past mistakes and cure an entire species, but he has to sacrifice himself in order to do so. Players' hearts were broken then, when Mordin quietly starts singing his famous "I am the very model of a scientist Solarian" song to himself before an explosion takes him out mid-sentence. At least his final act was a noble one though. Number 9, Andrew Ryan, BioShock. BioShock is absolutely filled with memorable moments and unexpected twists, but the death of Andrew Ryan, the creator of the underwater city of Rapture, has gone down in history as a truly iconic scene. This is the moment where the player finally realizes that they've been brainwashed since the start, obeying any order that involves the trigger words "would you kindly." It was a major twist unveiled in masterful fashion, and the scene is made even more powerful as Ryan gives the player various commands ordering them to sit and stand. The player has no control over their actions as the protagonist Jack does everything Ryan says. Then, as Ryan realizes his time has come, he hands over a golf club and uses those 3 magic words to order Jack to kill him. Blending poignancy and gore, it's an eminently powerful scene, flipping the game's entire plot on its head and serving as a fitting finale for one of gaming's most fascinating antagonists. Number 8, John Marston, Red Dead Redemption. John Marston ends Red Dead Redemption by giving up on his life as a gunslinging outlaw, finding a little farm with his wife and son, and steering clear of quick-draw duels. Unfortunately, the detestable Agent Ross has other ideas. Ross arrives at Marston's ranch, along with around 3 dozen armed men. Knowing he has no chance of escape, John sacrifices himself in order to give his family time to get away, boldly stepping out through the barn doors and bringing down as many of the soldiers as he possibly can before being riddled with bullets. Fortunately, Red Dead Redemption's epilogue gives players a much-needed dose of justice, as the final scene saw us play as John's son Jack in his successful quest for revenge against Ross. Number 7, Asura, ASURA'S Wrath. The titular Asura takes and dishes out one unholy beating after another throughout this overlooked Capcom classic from 2012, but the game's ending is a bittersweet one, as his famous wrath is finally extinguished along with his life. Asura's death was actually only seen in the final DLC episodes released for the game, which saw the rage-fueled demigod going up against his biggest foe, the Lord of Creation himself. The game's climactic battle is beyond epic, as the very fabric of time and space is torn asunder beneath energy blasts, with Asura sacrificing himself in the final blow to defeat his foe. Number 6, Grey Fox, Metal Gear Solid. One of the coolest characters in the Metal Gear series, and that's saying something. The cyborg ninja Grey Fox goes out in a blaze of glory by diving headfirst into Solid Snake's battle with Metal Gear Rex. Pinned against a wall by the bipedal tank and having his arm sliced off while jumping in to save Solid Snake, Liquid taunts him by saying, "In the Middle East, we don't hunt foxes, we hunt jackals." Fox then replies with one of the most satisfying one-liners in Metal Gear history, crying out, "A cornered fox is more dangerous than a jackal," lifting his remaining arm and firing a destructive blast at Rex Radome, giving Snake the chance he needs to finish the fight. Fox dies brutally as Liquid uses Rex to stomp him to death, but the cyborg ninja accepts his fate, shouting to Snake that he'd always fought for what he believed in. Number 5. Ganondorf, Legend of Zelda, Wind Waker. Ganondorf has been roasted in more incredible ways than I have by Jules on a What Culture night out.
You gangly twat.
But one of his most iconic death scenes occurred in Wind Waker. It's not the context or the story that makes this death so epic, but the manner of how it happens. After a tricky final boss fight, Link jumps high in the air, preparing his Master Sword for the final crushing blow, and then comes diving back down, impaling Ganondorf right through his big bad skull. "The wind, it is blowing," says Ganondorf before his entire body turns to stone. It was a highly satisfying moment and a fitting end to a long and tumultuous adventure. Number 4. Dom, Gears of War 3. Gears of War may be filled with the toughest men with the biggest necks in the gaming world, but a few manly tears were shed when one of the franchise's most likable and witty characters, Dominic Dom Santiago, sacrificed himself to save the rest of his squad mates. Delta Squad is being overrun by Locust and Lambent forces when Dom spots a vehicle and a huge gas tanker nearby. He quickly realizes that the only way to give his friends a chance of survival is to crash the truck into the tanker itself and sacrifice himself in a huge, ridiculous explosion. It's a really moving scene as we see Dom bid farewell to his best pal Marcus Phoenix, who pleads with him to stop. Dom went through the ringer in the second and third game, making it even more heartbreaking to see him go out in such a dramatic and unexpected fashion. Number 3. Galuf, Final Fantasy V. It might have been made in the 16-bit era, but Final Fantasy V proved that you don't need realistic graphics to tell a powerful story. The game pulled on players' heartstrings from start to finish, but one moment that truly stands above the rest is the death of one of the playable party members, Galuf. The game's villain, the suitably named X-Death, has the protagonists caught up in a couple magical spells, but Galuf manages to break free and takes on the evil sorcerer in a one-on-one battle to the death. X-Death is far too powerful for him to defeat on his own, but the old man manages to survive blast after blast, withstanding the most powerful spells in the game. X-Death famously proclaims that all the hatred in the world wouldn't be enough to defeat him, as Galuf is fighting with a force of love and survives until X-Death basically just gives up. Number 2. Tassadar, StarCraft. Players of the original StarCraft will remember Tassadar's sacrifice as one of the most incredible and iconic moments in the entire game, as well as being one of the most memorable heroic sacrifices in video game history in general. Tassadar was once the commander of the Protoss forces before being charged with treason, who then returns when his homeworld is invaded. In order to repel the incoming Zerg forces once and for all, as well as proving that he was anything but a traitor, Tassadar flies his own broken ship directly into the central command ship. He uses his psychic powers to essentially turn his vessel into a kind of psionic bomb in order to completely obliterate the game's main antagonist in a giant, glorious explosion. I'm sensing a theme here. Number 1. 6. Halo Reach. From the beginning, you know the end, was the famous tagline for Halo Reach, with longtime fans of the series already well aware that the story was going to end badly. Since Master Chief is regarded as the last living Spartan in the first Halo game, we knew that our heroes didn't have any chance of survival, but that didn't make it any less heartbreaking when they were cut down one by one. Almost all of the major deaths in the game could have featured on this list, but the most moving of all was the death of the main playable character, 6. At the very end of the game, we see the mission title Fall of Reach, alongside one single objective: survive. Some players hope that maybe, somehow, there might have been a way to get off the planet and keep 6 alive, But it wasn't to be. Instead, you go out fighting, valiantly battling wave after wave of enemies until you inevitably take too much damage and fall to your knees, defeated.
Gosh, can you believe that person said that about that particular video on that entry? I sure can't. But you should like, share and subscribe below anyway. And also, the people who made this video, they're right here. Go follow them and give them some love. Also, there's more content, probably above my head. Check it out. Or don't. 50-50.